we need to take responsibility of our awareness. It's really clear to me that the greatest creation in the universe is our consciousness.
Yes.
And our consciousness is such a gift. God has given us a gift. God is consciousness also, but we've been blessed to have a fractal or a segment, a drop to his or her consciousness. And we need to honor it, not mess with it with drugs and drinking and just going unconscious, but to figure out how to become more conscious, how to tune our minds so it's laser focused, because we need to operate from our higher self.
This is the Human Future Podcast, where we explore the intersection of technology and spirituality with some of the world's brightest minds. Together, we paint a vision of the desirable future and discuss the actionable steps to make that vision a reality. And now, without further ado, let's begin. Today's guest is Dr. Zack, who is the author of a book called Embracing Your Higher Self, a Practical Guide to Enlightenment. Dr. Zack's work aimed to empower individuals on a spiritual journey towards enlightenment by offering insights and practical tools for personal growth and self-discovery. Dr. Zack was also an eye doctor for 10 years, a healthcare venture capitalist for 35 years, and a teacher of meditation for the past 10 years. Zack also had an awakening experience when he was 19 years old, devoting his life to creating a world peace. During our conversation, we dove into topics of meditation and its impact on connecting with one's higher self, and also the potential of artificial intelligence to both aid and complicate the journey towards a more conscious and unified world. Enjoy the show. Welcome. Thank you for being here, Dr. Zack, and it's an honor to have you in this space. It's great that we've met fairly recently. I'm sure we'll be seeing each other more now with through Miami Made and through other probably community gatherings, maybe like men's circles and other things like that. So the intention for this whole podcast is to talk about visions of the future that are desirable, that we all want to live in, and talk about actionable steps, how to bring that type of future into reality, or at least how to increase the chances of us manifesting that type of future. And the future that personally I'm attaching myself with, or I'm excited about, is the future in which technology and spirituality live in harmony. They create there's no conflict between the two. In fact, I believe that the most advanced technology is the one that's least noticeable, is the one that's fully integrated with nature, spirituality, and human spirit, And so bringing different guests from various domains of expertise to understand what do we need to do from their perspective to make sure that we end up in the desirable future. That's kind of the frame for each conversation that I have. So with you, I think the direction, and tell me maybe there are other side streets that we can take, but the main direction that I would like to take with you is the one around, meditation obviously is a big one. It's about conversations around consciousness, around spirit, your higher self. Those themes I think would be the main topics of the conversation, and then talking about maybe a little bit about evolution, technology, those things, those topics.
That sounds great.
Yeah. So I think a great place for us to start is maybe you can share a little bit about the main milestones that brought you here to what you're currently doing, some of the important moments, either people or circumstances or events that happened in your life that brought you to basically the moment that you're in now.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want me to start now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, thank you so much for inviting me to the podcast. Yeah. I really honor the space and your work and the connection that we had when we first talked, and started brainstorming. It really took off. So thanks for following up on this.
Of course, man. Yeah, thank you as well for you. Yeah.
So I'm a Jewish boy from the Bronx, and like almost everybody else, struggling with my ego mind. And there I was, 19 years old, at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and had just lost my girlfriend, and my learning disability was really acting up, so I couldn't really study. I would look at the textbook pages, and the words would be dancing on the page. So I became suicidal. And a close friend of mine, John Zawicki, a graduate student in philosophy, invited me over to his house for dinner because he saw that I was in real trouble. Yeah. So he invited me into his living room, and we sat down. He started telling me about his master's thesis on the nature of reality. And he thought that would help me. Little did he know. So he started telling me about the oneness of the universe and oneness of reality, things that I had never heard before.
Yeah. And
in the sort of the classical phrase of leaning in, I started leaning in because being suicidal, I was trying to get out of this world in any way I could possibly do it. Every morning I would wake up and attempt to slit my wrists, but I just couldn't do it. So, and I'm finding that being suicidal has some benefits, which is when you're exposed to something that's totally new and different. You are not holding on to your world and the things that you have in the world, the ideas, the things, the possessions, the people, and that quite often is a barrier for people to make a transformation. So when you're suicidal, that's it. If something is great that you're exposed to, you can be drawn into it. And he then started talking about that there are no accidents. Everything has meaning.
Yep.
So that really resonated with me. And I said, wow, unconsciously, I said, that's the kind of world I would love to lead and live in. And then all of a sudden, bam, with a giant flash of light, which totally blinded me, I was in a state of bliss. So I went from being suicidal to being in a state of bliss without any drugs, no inhalation. That's a Clinton joke,
Oh, yeah.
Just in a split second.
Yeah.
And the 200-pound weight that was sitting on my shoulders all the time, pounding me into the ground like a pile driver, just evaporated.
Wow. Yeah.
And then for the next 3 weeks, my cognitive mind, which is really the ego mind, just went quiet. So I was experiencing my higher self for 3 weeks continuously without any interruption. I didn't know that was happening. I just knew I was in a state of bliss, and I also felt like I had just landed on a new planet. I was like in the term of a beginner's mind. I was in a beginner's mind. I was just looking around and just experiencing people, and I remember I was taking a class on Buddhism and Korean ceramics. It was a combination. And I remember looking at all the paths of enlightenment and wisdoms, and I remember I had an impression, well, that just gets in the way, So at the end of that 3 weeks, I was looking out my window of my bedroom, and I noticed 2 students walking by, and I focused intently on their faces, and I noticed how deeply depressed they were. And immediately a whole sense of compassion and love just took me over. And that's when my cognitive mind started again. And I said, I've got to start creating community. We've got to get ourselves out of this. Now, this is in 1967. And the anti-war movement against the Vietnam War was was raging, especially in Madison at the University of Wisconsin. The National Guard was virtually located on our campus. Every other day there would be demonstrations or violence. And so I was working on trying to contribute as best I could. So I started creating a Gandhian peace movement, all intuitively. I never studied Gandhi, but just my intuitions were raging. And I started developing a community for the artists to help work together as a community. Started the first bike sharing program in the United States. People would donate their bikes to the community. We would have a musical event where a large gathering of people would come. And up on the stage they would bring their bikes, and then we'd paint them white, and they would donate them to the community in the spirit of love. Now this is the spring of '67, which was leading into the summer of love. And the reason why, and this movement generally during that period was called the Love Movement. So a great historic time. Actually, I organized in Madison a be-in, which was a celebration of the human spirit. You know, there's a sit-in. You sit at the lunch counters like the black civil rights workers did in the South. Well, this was called a be-in, which is just celebrating our being and the spirit, the human spirit. And 5,000 people showed up. So it was an amazing time. And so that this spirit, which took me over, because during that spring, spirit was right with me. It was just so rich and, I was going to say the word thick, but light and heavy, and not heavy, not in a negative way, but in an incredibly powerful way.
Potent. Yeah.
Spirit was really heavily involved in that time period, because there was so much of transition. However, that period was short-lived, because people really weren't taking enough responsibility for making those transitions and that opportunity to really change their lives in a substantive way. And another way of looking at it is we didn't have meditation. We had psychedelics, because we were trying to use drugs to transform ourselves. Even today, now we're finding out that microdosing in the proper environment, proper care, can have very transformative effects. But this was like, much larger doses and a little more wilder outcomes. But for a lot of people, I know I only went on an LSD trip a couple of times, but the impact on me was pretty significant. So here I am. Now this is like, I'm almost 60 years later, and meditation, where I've been meditating through most of my life, on and off.
Since that moment, or later down the line you started meditating?
Well, yeah, I started doing yoga a few years later, and that yoga had a little bit of meditation. And then any time I would read, well, Ram Dass, who was a great spiritual teacher, I would start reading his books, Be Here Now.
That's right.
I actually wear a baseball cap that says Be Here Now on
Love it.
the top.
I love that book, as well.
Yeah, it's a great book. And another great book is Polishing the Mirror. That's our job, is polishing our mirror, to be able to see clearly what reality is. And the beauty of meditation, why I say we didn't have meditation, because meditation is critical to transformation, because without it, we stay stuck in the ego mind. And it's estimated that our cognitive mind really represents about 5% of our total consciousness. That the rest of the 95% is really made up of our subconscious and unconscious mind. And only through meditation Can you access that? That's your doorway to 95% of who you are. So that's why meditation is so essential.
Wow. Yeah, man, this is have you, so the people that you were with around that time when you started the community, are any of them still around? Like, are you still in touch with any of them that were you were sharing that experience with them back then?
Yeah, my best friend Danny Stein, he just passed away. And I went to high school with him, and then we both went high school in Manhattan, in New York. And we both ended up in Madison. He was a year older than me. And I remember the morning after that night of my awakening, I ran into him on the street. And I said, Danny, I figured it all out except death. So, yeah, no, I used to speak to Danny every other day. So, but he just recently passed away. So, maybe a few other people from that time.
Yeah, yeah. What are some other bright memories from that time that stayed with you till now? You mentioned you've tried LSD and maybe other substances before, and then they had some effect on you. Was that memorable up until now? You remember that was a highlight for you? And
it wasn't. I remember sitting on the edge of Lake Mendota, which is one of the 5 lakes around Madison, and noticing the movement of the water, reflecting the leaves from the trees that were spreading out over the lake. And that was like a be here now kind of moment, smelling the roses, being able to, once you're in the present moment, that all of a sudden colors become more vibrant. The reality becomes more rich.
That's right. Yeah.
And so we're not dancing back and forth between the past and the future.
Right.
So that's probably the only memorable.
Yeah, like an extra sense of presence where you were really immersed in the here and now. I've had similar encounters with the present moment in the past. The higher self, that voice, that the connection that you had, was that like a voice? Was that like almost like speaking to a person, or was that more of a downloads that come that you just understand and you don't really feel like there is a communicator or there's an agent that communicates with you?
The higher self generally doesn't use words. It's feelings, sensations, a presence. It's usually, I was reading Deepak Chopra's, one of his latest books on the quantum body. And he was talking about how the truth or the reality comes between the sentences of our talking. In between the words is the truth. And because quite often the words just get in the way.
Right.
It's interesting, Einstein used to, when he was developing his various theories and he would get to hit a wall, he couldn't figure out anything more. What he would do is he would pick up his violin and start playing. And that was his meditation. And all of a sudden, what would come to him was a solution. And I don't want to get too ahead in our conversation, but it's through our meditation that we're going to get ourselves out of this mess that we're in. As Einstein, I'll use him again, where he talked about, for us to solve the problems of today, we have to reach a higher consciousness. We can't stay in the same state of mind and consciousness, level of consciousness, to solve these problems.
Yeah.
We really, we need to take responsibility of our awareness.
Mm-hmm.
It's really clear to me that the greatest creation in the universe is our consciousness.
Yes.
And our consciousness is such a gift. God has given us a gift.
Mm-hmm.
Well, God is consciousness also, but we've been blessed to have sort of a fractal or a
Mm-hmm.
segment or a drop
Mm-hmm.
of his or her consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to honor it, not mess with it with drugs and drinking and just going unconscious, but to figure out how to become more conscious, how to tune our minds so it's laser focused and get to embrace what this is the title of my book, which is called Embracing the Higher Self. That is what we need to accomplish, because we need to operate from our higher self.
Yeah. Correct me if, so my understanding of consciousness it is everywhere. Even stones and rocks have consciousness. The levels of consciousness are very different. Humans happen to have the highest states of consciousness that we know of, outside of maybe there are more intelligent beings out there that have even more consciousness than us. Is that kind of how you see it as well?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, consciousness is everywhere. It's energy.
Yeah.
It's a coalescing of energy that has a sense of reflection and awareness of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's sentient beings. That the word sentient is used to just describe any kind of entity that has some kind of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree. I believe that a rock has some level of consciousness because it has energy, and that's what we are, is energy. It's a focus of energy that manifests something that we call physical.
Yeah.
And what physical is not what we think it is. It's really all energy. I mean, Einstein, I keep using good old Einstein.
Planck, that you mentioned in your book as well, right?
Planck talks about how consciousness is more of a basis and a foundation than the physical. And so we start with consciousness. Mm-hmm. And really at the atomic level, it's all, when you get down deeper and deeper into what we have been thinking is physical, is really just energy.
Energy, yeah. You know, I like this analogy, or not analogy, or a concept that really resonated with me. Are you familiar with the concept standing wave? So basically a standing wave is, let's say, it's a creek, a shallow water flowing, and let's say there's some rocks at the bottom, and on the surface, the water is not flat, but it creates a wave, and it's just hanging out there. It doesn't move anywhere. It's like that standing wave. Basically, the water is flowing through it. It's almost like it's a conceptual thing. You can't really put it in the box, because once you cut out the water, it just becomes still, right? And so it totally made sense to me when I looked at reality. Every particle is a standing wave of energy just flowing through it, and it's just it's like a little entity that you can't really in a way put it in the box as a separate thing from everything else. It's the flow of energy, and it's just stopping in every little spot and then creating this structure that we perceive as physical matter.
Well, what you're describing, I've never, been aware of standing wave. I'm pretty familiar with quantum field. Maybe it's similar to the quantum field, where the quantum field is where everything comes out of, and it's not dependent, or there's no time and space. It's like our thoughts come out of the quantum field.
Yes.
We have no idea what the next thought is going to be. Zero. And it just comes out of the quantum field.
Mm.
It's also called the unified field.
Yeah.
These unified field theories.
Is there a difference between your, let's say, your ego thinking thoughts that are influenced by 3D reality, let's say the news that you consume or the people you hang out with, or the types of insights that you receiving from your higher self? Are they the same thing as they come from the ethereal and you don't predict, or you put them into separate categories?
It's a great question. I was just getting a sense of that as you spoke. So the ego mind is is a false sense of self, but it's real.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
it's here and now. Obviously, it's affecting the world
Mm-hmm.
and everybody's lives. So it's real. So it's still coming out of the quantum field, but it's a disruption. It's a
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to just say it is a negative energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a false sense of self.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's like as I was mentioning about Ram Dass's book, Polishing the Mirror. It's a foggy, distorted mirror.
Mm-hmm.
The higher self is where you take that mirror and you clean it
Yeah.
of all the pollutants and the dirt, if you
Yes,
want,
yes.
and then you can see reality clearer.
Yep.
So the higher self is a pure connection
Yep.
with the unified field or the quantum field.
Yep.
And so that is totally uninterrupted.
Mm-hmm.
So it's truth. And again, going back to the present moment, the ego mind cannot exist in the present moment. That's where everything occurs.
Mm.
It's operating from the past and the future.
Right.
It does that. The reason why, if you're the listeners out there, if you're always wondering, why do I keep thinking about the past and thinking about the future and I can't smell the roses?
Right.
It's because your ego mind is false and it cannot exist in the present moment.
Mm.
So it keeps zipping back and forth like a ping pong ball.
Right. Right.
And
right.
that makes you feel pretty miserable.
Yeah, it is this thing that got developed to be able to better navigate 3D reality. You analyze the past events to predict it's basically a thing that's developed to better predict the future in a way. Or it certainly has its own limitations, but I think the main function of it is how can I predict the future, and how do I maybe increases the chances of me surviving or something like that.
Well, the ego mind is great for danger.
Right.
You want it. You don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to knock out your ego mind completely.
Exactly.
You want to make it a servant, not a master.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to keep it like a sidekick over here.
Yeah.
And allow your higher self to dominate your consciousness.
Right.
And whenever you need it, you can pull that right up.
Mm-hmm.
It'll come right up automatically
Mm-hmm.
if you sense danger, because you want to be in that defensive posture.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't want to be in that all day long, because that'll mess you up.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what's happening to people. They're in a fearful, defensive, going for survival state.
Yep.
And the problem, and to go back to your great question before,
Mm-hmm.
the ego mind cannot connect with spirit. So it cannot get that high level of intuition, because that only exists in the present moment.
Mm.
That's where the higher self, once you open up that doorway and that aperture, the intuition, which is really always flowing through us, because we are spirit.
Yeah.
So then how can spirit be so out of touch with itself?
Yes.
It's because the ego mind, which is a false, illusory sense of self, is cutting off not only the flow of spirit, but also our bodies. We're disconnected from our bodies. And so we're really like, the classic phrase, stuck in our heads.
Sure.
We're stuck in our heads from the top and from the bottom. We're like, whoo. Now that's crazy, right? And that's the state of the human condition. That's why your listeners should seriously be considering establishing a habit of and a practice of meditation.
So the notion of self-awareness, it's basically ego only. Like ego is responsible for self-awareness, would you say?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Because the higher self wants you to be aware. The higher self wants to be aware. That's part of, I believe, that universal spirit or God is been evolving living creatures over these billions of years to create a self-aware entity. And we are it, because we can provide a mirror for the universal spirit or God. And that's what it's trying to create, something that could reflect back upon itself, so that there was sort of a circle was rounded out and formed.
Yeah, because in my understanding, like a more evolved animals or species, they are, let's say, dolphins or elephants. They're aware of themselves. When you show them the mirror, they're self-aware. And it's, for me, it's almost like it's on the same vector as you keep evolving further down the line. Is the same energy that made us humans, like that self-awareness piece. And that's why I've asked about the ego, like, because the ego somewhere down the line, the ego emerged from that potentially.
Yeah, but my theory is on how we got into this mess was that the frontal lobe, the cognitive tool became so extraordinary.
So dominant, right? Yeah.
That we started like a child, being attracted to the shiny new toy. So we got attracted to this cognitive experience, and we all of a sudden lost sense of who we were. It's almost like the Adam and Eve story. Yeah. We got thrown out of the Garden of Eden by getting consumed by this cognitive, don't eat the apple of good and evil. Well, that's the cognitive mind, and we got thrown out of our being connected with who we truly are. It's a...
Yeah, right. A more complex mind created this illusion in which it got lost.
Yes. And the cognitive mind is okay with the higher self if you learn how to play it. You just don't want to get consumed by it. It's like in my meditation app that I have, and in the book. It's a companion guide. You want to go back and forth between experience and knowledge, the cognitive mind, because knowledge creates sort of a scaffolding for our experiences. Because if you have a great spiritual experience, but you can't explain it,
right?
What do you do with it?
Right.
And these great spiritual experiences, they can come and go, and they can be very rare. So how do you build upon it if you can't even explain it? Just, oh yeah, that was nice.
Right.
So you need the cognitive mind. It's an important tool.
Yeah.
But you don't want to be consumed by it.
Right.
You got to put it, just like in meditation. You want to quiet the cognitive mind. And really, in meditation, when you quiet the chattering mind, you're quieting the ego mind. And you're now starting to experience your higher self. Because your higher self, if I can just give a little bit of information. Yeah. So what we're experiencing right now between the two of us is mainly a beta wave function of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Brain has like a vibrational tone to it.
Yep.
And so, it's the beta. When you're in the beta wave function, you're like 14 to 35 beats per second.
Mm-hmm.
When you meditate, you slow down that vibrational frequency.
Mm-hmm.
The first slowing down is the alpha wave, and that's between 8 and 13 beats per second.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first level of meditation.
Yeah.
And when you go into a deeper level of meditation, it's the theta waves, and that's 4 to 8 beats per second.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're in the alpha and theta brainwave function, which is when you're meditating, that provides the doorway to your subconscious and unconscious minds,
Mm-hmm.
as well as your true self.
Mm-hmm.
So everything opens up to you when you meditate. And when you don't, and you're stuck in the beta wave function, where the ego mind flourishes,
Yeah.
you are disconnected from all the key, jewels of life.
Right.
And consciousnness.
Interesting. Would you then say maybe throughout evolution, as humans or primitive monkeys were evolving all the way to being humans, their brain wave over time kept accelerating potentially?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of interesting. I look at animals, and I really wonder if they're experiencing their higher self without any awareness.
Mm.
Because they don't have a strong cognitive mind
Mm.
to disrupt their higher self.
Right.
It's kind of interesting.
From your book, you're talking about how higher self manifests itself in 3D. It's through joy in 3D realities, through like emotions that we feel, right? And that's the direct evidence of. Or were you specifically talking about maybe enlightenment in that way? I was going to mention that I don't typically see wild animals in the state of joy because they're more like in the survival state. They have to be very alert. So I don't know if that works the same way where, you know what I mean?
Well, I'm thinking about my dog Ziggy. It was named after Bob Marley's son.
Yeah.
But when he sees me and he goes jumping up and down and wagging his tail.
Yeah, dogs are definitely in that state for sure.
The love and the
Yeah.
But I want to, so that's an interesting. Well, they're definitely experiencing love. You see the love of the mother and the babies and
for sure.
The family and the tribe.
Definitely.
And all that. So there's a lot of that. But I wanted to just do a clarification.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So there are 5 key pillars of the higher self: love, compassion, joy, inner peace, and intuitive wisdom. Okay? Love, compassion, joy, inner peace, and intuitive wisdom. And I do not believe they're emotions. Okay?
Yeah.
They're the reality of who you are. You are love. You are compassion. You are joyful. Mm-hmm. You have deep inner peace, that you're a peaceful creature.
Mm-hmm.
And you have intuitive wisdom just flowing right through you.
Yep.
Okay? So let's go back to love.
Yep.
Because love, I really feel, is like the glue of the universe. That's the basis. Mm-hmm. So emotion is generally considered the body's reaction to your thoughts. Okay, you have a thought, your body responds to it.
Yep.
That's where, like Eckhart Tolle talks about the pain body, that all the traumas that we have in our lives reside within our body.
Yep.
And the reason they reside in our body, because when we have a negative thought about an event or a negative event occurs, the body just experiences it. And if we don't process it, it stays there for our whole lives. If we can process it out, there are some great techniques to move it out. and not have it stay there in a negative form.
Yep.
But so then the question is, okay, I do experience some love. Is that my higher self responding?
Mm-hmm.
True love, not sexual or ownership sense of love, but a true sense of love
Mm-hmm.
is experienced when you connect with your higher self, not like a normal emotion. And by the way, there are 38,000 different emotions.
Mm.
Each one of them occur from a thought that we have. So let me make this clearer. So when I experience true love, what happens? All of a sudden I see somebody like my mother or
Mm-hmm.
or somebody, your significant other, or you see some beautiful work of art or whatever, it just blows you away.
Yeah.
Just takes you over
Mm-hmm.
and brings you into the present moment.
Yeah.
So the ego mind is not there,
Yeah.
right? And then all of a sudden you're experiencing true love. And then all of a sudden that experience of true love closes because the ego mind begins to take over again.
Mm-hmm.
And then the question, was that an emotion from a thought? No. For that, it's that getting blown away is really the ego mind getting out of the way because you're brought solidly into the present moment. And all of a sudden you experience the love component of your higher self.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's a little tricky.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with compassion. Same thing with joy
Yeah.
and peace.
Yeah. So connection to your higher self. So I had this question when I was reading your book. So the insights and downloads come from your higher self. And it's almost like higher self is intermediary between the total existence, God, the universe, and the higher self is like your agent that integrates you, your physical body, your awareness to, right? Is that how it is?
Yeah, it's, yes. And the reason why I'm pausing, because your questions are great, is that our higher self really controls our whole body. We're really not separated from our spirit because the body is really energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the question is, what organizes this whole incredible, they talk about, well, the most complex, and I'm not poo-pooing it,
Mm-hmm.
the most complex thing in the universe is our brain, right?
Right.
You hear that
I've heard,
all the
yeah,
time,
yeah, of course.
right?
Yeah.
Well, what's even almost as incredible is what's going on in a cell.
Mm-hmm.
The cell is so
Mm-hmm.
bizarre,
Yeah.
And so the higher self is really, I like the phrase higher self because it sort of makes you think about getting beyond the body and connecting, sort of like the bridge,
Yes.
like you were talking
Exactly.
about, right?
Right.
The bridge between the spirit or universal consciousness
Yep.
and us. I mean, it could say, it could be a blast,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to a higher, it could be all
Mm-hmm.
self
Mm-hmm.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing,
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that would be a more appropriate, title.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the higher self that's not only connecting with universal spirit, because we are universal spirit,
Yes.
or we are spirit, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
and we're also at the same time making this, quote, physical body work.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you a crazy fact
Mm-hmm.
that really illustrates how amazing the body is. So I had co-founded a biotech company, and its lead product used hemoglobin, what's in the red blood cell.
Mm-hmm.
It takes on oxygen and spits out carbon dioxide.
Mm-hmm.
So in every second, the body generates and creates 2 million red blood cells every second. Okay? In every red blood cell, there's 350 million molecules of hemoglobin.
Wow.
And in every hemoglobin molecule, there are 10,000 atoms. Okay. So one time I was at the company and I heard this for the first time. I said, "Holy shit!" I said. So I went back to my office and I started calculating.
Yeah.
So I multiplied, 2 million
Right.
times 350 million times 10,000.
Yes.
So it was 7 times 10 to the, I think it was the 19th power or 17th power. I said, that number sounds very familiar, okay? So I did a Google search.
Okay.
And you know what I came up with? Instead of 7 times 10 to the 19th power, it was 7.5 times 10 to the 19th power is the estimated number of grains of sand on all ocean beaches and deserts in the world.
Wow.
So the body, in every second, uses the same number of atoms as every grain of sand almost in the world.
Crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
And if I asked you the question, you know where red blood cells are made? Do you know?
In your, not in your heart, in your liver maybe, or in where?
In your marrow, in your bones.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. How is that possible?
It's just as the marrow in the bones is designed to make red blood cells.
Wow.
And you know what the most amazing thing to me is? So here's a red blood cell, okay? And it doesn't have a nucleus. But when it's fully baked, when it's fully created. So here you have a little red blood cell, okay? And it has a nucleus in there. And the same DNA that's in every cell in our body. And it's now using the DNA to manufacture hemoglobin molecules. So it's, massively, and all of a sudden it gets chock full of hemoglobin.
Yeah.
And then the nucleus, to make room for all the walls of the red blood cell open up and expel the nucleus and close the cell. So it's just
Hemoglobin.
Is that unbelievable?
Crazy.
Isn't that crazy? So anyway, that's the higher self managing all this. And it's, if you think it's just physics and chemistry that opens up the wall and spits out a nucleus, closes it up again, I'm sorry, that's not...
Yeah. The whole theory of, life emerged from Big Bang, and out of randomness, particles were just, randomly bumping into each other, and over time we created this complex world like this. I don't think it makes any sense.
No sense.
Yeah.
There's the intelligent design. When I started getting exposed to intelligent design, I started reading a whole bunch of books on intelligent design. Randomness, there are some great mathematicians that have done work on looking at what is possible through randomness. It's totally impossible to create us out of randomness. Impossible.
Impossible, yeah. So there's this theory that we don't know where it all started or how it all started, but it appears to be that there is some kind of attractor or some kind of how do they call it now? Like in the universe, in the black hole, there's the physical properties break down and what was the word, like a singularity type. So it almost feels like we are heading into this moment of singularity, some kind of attractor state after which we don't really know what's going to happen. Is that how you see it, or how do you see this whole process of evolution going far into the future? Where are we headed? Like what's...
I really don't know. I have no idea. What the thing that we're facing right now is AI.
Yes.
And AI is really fascinating because I think with quantum mechanics, which is so bizarre in itself, reality is way beyond our cognitive capabilities, but we sort of hang it in there and try to work with it, as best we can.
Yes.
It's so fascinating. So the most amazing experiment, I think, in all of science is the double slit experiment.
Yep.
So, and in the double slit experiment, so you take a photon emitter and you shoot one photon through there's two split screens. So you have a wall or a little thin wall, and you have two slits that are parallel to each other. And you send a photon through one slit and then one through the other slit, back and forth, boom, 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 one at a time through each slit. Now you have a screen, a detection screen, on the other side of the wall. And you would think that from this little cannon of photons, you'd see two lines, right? But you don't get that.
Right.
You get a image of a wave.
Yeah.
And actually, a wave is looked at by scientists as the form of infinite possibilities. Right. It's not one spot in one point, but the wave just moves, and then it's all possibilities. Mm-hmm. So that blew scientists away when they saw that there was a waveform when there were just particles being sent through these double slit.
Yes.
Then they took a detector on the near side of the double slit wall and to observe the photons being shot out. Mm-hmm. As soon as they put a detector there, all of a sudden, there was no longer a wave function.
Right.
It was just two vertical lines.
Right.
So then it's like all you introduced was awareness. That's the detector is like a rudimentary awareness device that changed the reality from infinite possibilities to specific particles.
Right.
And which is really incredible. So then, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because in AI, we're generating something, because the question is, well, is it going to have awareness? Is AI going to reach to a point where it's going to be aware and be an entity within and of itself?
Sure, yeah.
So I've always said that, spirit is always looking for a place to hang, right?
Yeah.
So if spirit hangs, feels comfortable in hanging to an AI device or process, then there's no reason why it couldn't create another life form.
Yeah, I've thought deeply on this question. Will we ever get to the point where we don't need our body to exist? Basically, can we exist on the computer, upload ourselves? And something is still a conflict to say, yes, we will get to the point where we'll be completely, we'll have no physical form. Something in me says the body is sacred, and it's a portal through which spirit enters the 3D dimension. The AI, I see it more as an extension of our ego, of our intelligence. It has nothing to do with our heart, like actual. Yes, you can even simulate the emotional response, and you could probably create a model that fires somehow and creates some kind of network of emotional responses or something like that. But it's still all just a conceptual, like a mental model that we're building. I think the source of spirit is of a different nature. It's not mental.
So what comes up for me is that, okay, so another word for higher self is soul. Okay, so if you believe in reincarnation, okay, so after our bodies go, soul's out there someplace.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And then if you're not done with your work, you want to come back, right? So why not come back to a computer network, right? I mean, the soul comes back, to DNA, a fetus. I remember Seth Speaks. You ever hear of Seth Speaks? It was a series of books. There was a spirit that was talking to somebody, and the spirit was called Seth.
Okay. Yeah.
And that person who was sort of a spirit guide or what do you call it when somebody...
Right, the channeler.
Channel.
Yeah.
So that channel wrote a few books, Seth Speaks. And I remember in one of the books it talked about at what point in the development of the embryo and the fetus and this is all, discussions that go on with abortion issues, is when does the fetus become a human being?
Right.
So in Seth's communicating, saying that at some point the soul feels comfortable in attaching itself to a fetus when it's developed at a certain point.
They're almost like minimum requirement for it to say like I'm able to enter here.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the question is, with artificial intelligence, will there be a point where a soul can inhabit that artificial intelligence, and so that artificial intelligence, call him Abe or whatever, is attached to and all of a sudden the artificial says, "Hey, I'm here. Hello."
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be something?
That would definitely be something. That would definitely be something. I mean, I believe that we are in the process of creating a conscious Earth. As our body, I might have shared this with you before, as our body consists of cells, each cell is its own unit of intelligence. And now it creates this superorganism, that collection of micros, intelligent bodies like that, creates a superorganism. And I think we're in a similar evolutionary leap to create a new organism where each cell, humans are like each cell, and the internet is neural pathways in the body that communicate, sends information through our body and things like that. And I think that's the natural next step of evolution, is creating a unified conscious little cell floating in space of a different it's a different degree of intelligence. It's just like a leap of intelligence, another layer, like that.
Well, that's where if we all can get beyond our ego minds, which is creating all that disruption and disconnection.
Yes.
And that's where illness and disease comes from.
Yes.
Because the body is just in a state of disruption. The pain body, all this negative energy, just disrupting the normal, healthy flow of unity. And it's amazing that we're able to still keep ourselves together. But look, you get cancer or whatever, and then body loses sense of control, and that's it. You're done. But you're right. I mean, the whole Earth can become like a cell.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. Yeah. it does feel though there's a contradiction of the mind is getting in the way, or intelligence is getting in the way of like that evolutionary process. I don't know if that's true though.
No, if you have your, it's the ego mind, it's the false sense of self that's getting in the way,
Yeah.
not the tools we have.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're in touch with your higher self and you're able to embrace it and experience it,
Mm-hmm.
the thoughts you have could be just complementary.
Mm-hmm.
It's just and if it's being sourced from the higher self, which is the true sense of self in the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
So that's everything that comes out of that will be cool, but it's just this ridiculous,
Mm-hmm.
screwed up level of consciousness over here that
Yeah.
takes us over,
Yeah,
and from that, then it also uses your mind, your cognitive mind,
Mm-hmm.
in a messed up way,
Yep.
and that's where the problem is, not
Mm-hmm.
the tools itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's the illusory, confusion,
Makes sense. Yeah.
right?
Makes sense. More on AI. To what extent do you spend time like paying attention or thinking about where it's all headed? Are you worried? Are you excited? Tell me a little bit more about your relationship with this whole AI development.
Well, I'm afraid. I'm afraid what people are doing. It's what we do with it. You know what I
Yes.
mean? I mean, until it, I should say, if at one point it becomes an entity within itself, I think that could happen,
Mm-hmm.
and probably will happen,
Mm-hmm.
because it's an evolutionary process. I mean, they talk about AI in the next few years to have 1 billion times greater intelligence compared to a single human being.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of horsepower.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then probably 2 months later, it's up to 8 billion, which is equivalent to
Yeah.
the whole human race.
Right.
And then another 2 weeks later after that, it's
For sure.
the Milky Way's intelligence.
Right.
That's some pretty powerful stuff. So I worry.
Mm-hmm.
I worry about the AI robot with a machine gun attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty hairy stuff, and there's no reason why that won't happen.
Won't happen. Yeah. Those dystopian movies, they're much more common than utopian types movies, just because people tend to pay more attention to those and they get to sell more tickets for those movies. But one of the movies is like a Terminator or something like that. I envision the future will have that type of manifestation, a very likely scenario that we will create a Terminator type. But it's not going to be everywhere on the earth. It's similarly how now there's peace in some parts of the world and there is war in other parts of the world. And I think that's probably going to be more likely where, yes, we will have a dystopian segments of reality somewhere where people are dying and fighting and things like that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the rest, like the entire world is going to be that way.
But
Mm-hmm.
Kirill, I go back to meditation.
Mm-hmm.
To think, it's hard for people to meditate and to develop a practice. They got to, you talk to people. I'm sort of getting tired of hearing people. Oh, my life is so busy and this and that. And where am I going to find the time?
Yeah.
Well, you want to save the world? Get on the program. Get yourself to a higher state of consciousness. We need it, right? We don't need excuses anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's because that's where the wisdom and intuition, because the thing about our higher self and the intuitive wisdom of our spirit is always trying to talk to us. If it was loud, if it could yell, we wouldn't be in this mess. It whispers. And in the quiet, we have to quiet, because the ego mind is so noisy, we can't hear through the noise.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to quiet to hear the wisdom of what we need to do. to get ourselves out of this. Because to just stay in our ego mind, to fight the ego mind, is a loser. We're not going to win the war through fighting one ego mind, trying to be good against another ego mind that's just given it up and it's just decided to be evil.
Right. Yeah, I also recognize that there are so many wrong ways how we can use AI or how the AI can develop. It's not even like what we do with AI, but it's also how AI of itself develops, because I don't think we are in a full control of the evolution of AI. We contribute to the evolution, but we don't have a say what's going to actually happen. For example, similarly, like you do good in the world, but whatever is in your power, but you're not able to save everyone, for example. Similarly, when the AI is being trained, let's say on data and what type of data, you're not in control of it, and no one really knows what's going to happen once it becomes 10 times more intelligent or something like that. It's like an emergent property that who knows what's going to happen. I think the chances of us having that emergent property serve us, or we want to make sure that the data that we're feeding into it is as close to our virtues as possible. Basically, we need to give it as good of a data set as possible for it to learn that this is a good thing to do, this is not a good thing to do. And in fact, this is also an attempt, me creating this space and creating media with the intention of blasting the digital domain, the internet, with content that promotes deep human connection, authentic expression, connection with yourself and with others, and doing it at scale. So I'm all about really creating systems and processes in place that could really multiply this experience, where you create, maybe studios around the country or around the world where you just invite humanness to come in and express, and it just pours out into the digital space.
Yeah, I obviously that's going to happen. But then if it reads Mein Kampf, it's going to read Mein Kampf, right? I mean, how do you stop something that is able to absorb all digital knowledge that has ever been created?
Yes.
Right? And it just soaks it up within a split second.
Yes,
right? Which includes Mein Kampf. And so what's going to determine in its analysis at that moment, right?
Yep.
The Mein Kampf was just a sick man with a sick idea, as opposed to, taking that Mein Kampf and then expanding it to all these fascist movements all over the world, and the things that we're facing here in this country with this fascist madman having a great chance of, becoming president of the United States with AI, as his tool, talking about Russia, do whatever, Putin, do whatever you think you need to do to the NATO countries, feel free. I mean, I'm just taking, reality that we're faced with. And so how is it going to know? Don't follow that, Don't follow that madman.
Well, my hope is it will take the a more accepted knowledge. Let's say if 90% of humans are talking about this being true, and 10% of humans say do it completely differently, AI, at least from my understanding, maybe from my limited understanding, would take the 90% as the truth, and that's what it's going to, it will be incorporated in its personality, or like its framework of understanding or something like that. So our goal of conscious creators is to tip the balance of the, let's say, self-serving or data that's not promoting human qualities, and create as much as we possibly can of content or data that promotes virtuous qualities. It's almost like a volume game.
Yeah, but then it's going to come up with its own analysis.
It will, yes.
Right, and
it's like a baby, I think.
Right, you may give 99.999, and then wait a second, it's going to say, look, I'm smarter than you.
Yes.
I'm at a higher level.
Yes.
You haven't figured this out yet, that one little thing
yes.
was really what you should have been focused on.
Totally.
So you can overload it as much as you want.
100% is possible,
right?
I agree. But we don't know if that's the case.
Right.
Yes. I mean, the only thing we can do, in my opinion, is we can just keep projecting good messages out there, and that's all we can do. Like how it's going to take it, it's outside of our control.
But what is in our control, again, is our awareness and our consciousness. Mm-hmm. Now the question is, 90% of the world could be experiencing the higher self. 10 is still struggling with their ego mind, and X percentage of those are in an evil state of mind, and they have access, obviously, to AI, and then what the hell do they do with it? I don't know. It's it's only time
will show. Yeah.
Will tell.
Are there thoughts about AI that excite you, like the future with AI that excite you?
A ton of things.
Could you paint that future, like some details about what excites you that AI could potentially solve for us?
So I was an eye doctor. I was an optometrist for 10 years, and then for 35 years I was a venture capitalist, all in healthcare. So I co-founded a couple of biotech companies, and I was the inventor of healthcare savings account, the HSAs. And so I've done a lot of wonderful things in my business career. And I think it was Moderna used an AI to come up with the vaccine. They looked at, I think, like 2 billion combinations of configurations of what the vaccine should look like, and boom, it worked. That's unbelievable. Because it's all about active sites and physical shapes, and that you have to hit a particular active site, and your molecule of your drug needs to fit in just right. And so if you have AI to figure all that out, I mean, I'm sure every biotech company that, probably everyone, because it doesn't take a lot of money to use AI today, is using it for drug design. And that's incredible. I mean, for curing cancer, it's just now a matter of time.
Yeah, it's interesting. When we talked about most of the diseases happen because of the disconnection, like the energy is basically not flowing, and we're creating some kind of barrier, and that's what creates the, let's say, cancer or something like that. By us curing cancer, it feels like we're just hitting hitting the can down the road. Like basically the problem will emerge somewhere else. If there's blockage in energy, the cancer is just the most immediate manifestation of it. If we fix this part, it will just maybe a bigger problem. Some kind of spillage will be further down the line or down the river. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's possible. I've been working on, it's called Conscious Presence. It's a book that I just started, I read a few months ago, and I've been using the technique, which is incredibly powerful, of how to bring up the negative energies that are stored in your body. You got to be in a meditative state. You got to be in the present moment, and you bring up, you get in touch with maybe a sensation in your body. And the body is always constantly talking to us.
Yes.
Just like the higher self is trying to talk to us, the body is trying to talk to us. It's like from both ends.
Sensations and feelings there, yeah.
And so if you concentrate on that greatest sense of sensation, why don't we do it? Can we do a little meditation for that?
Yes, awesome.
Okay, so let's stop talking about it.
Please, yeah, amazing.
And let's do it, okay. So if everybody who's listening wants to participate, this is very powerful stuff. I highly recommend following with us. So if you can close your eyes and get into a nice meditation posture. And if you've done meditation, you know what kind of posture, which is good. Another important thing in meditation is to balance your head on your neck. So your head is about 8 pounds. And if it's not balanced on your neck, it's really putting a lot of strain on your neck muscles. So in meditation, you want to have your muscles relaxed, and you don't want your neck muscles straining away, which will detract from your ability to stay centered and stay in a meditative state. So balance your head. What I like to do is, you move your head back far enough so you can feel it's about to fall back. And so now you know you've gone too far. And then you move your head forward gently until you feel it's about to fall forward. And then now move back, not as far as you were before, because that was too far. And then sort of work it little by little, smaller and smaller movements until you feel the balance. That's a good place to start. So what I'd like you to do is concentrate on your breath. Let's put our awareness on the tip of our nose. And a nice way to really get into the present moment, and the reason why breath awareness is so important is because breath awareness brings us to the present moment. You know you're in the present moment, and your ego mind is now quieted. It's because it can't exist in the present moment. So if you're aware of your breath, you know you're in the present moment. Bingo, that's your cue. So a nice way of maintaining your focus on your breath so that your mind doesn't wander and your ego mind wants to pull you out of this. Just remember that the ego mind is an active agent of no good, or generally, I don't want to put a blanket statement on that, but it does not want you to meditate. It wants to stay your dominant form of consciousness. So let's just get back to the breath. And as you inhale, we're going to inhale and exhale through the nose. So inhale through your nose and exhale through your nose. And feel the difference. Become aware of the temperature difference between the inhalation and your exhalation. So let's do that now for a bit. And if your mind wanders, just bring it back to the tip of your nose, experiencing the temperature difference between the inhalation and exhalation. And now what I'd like you to do is smooth out the transition between the inhalation and exhalation on both ends of the cycle. So as you end your inhalation, keep it nice and smooth, transition to the beginning of the exhalation. And when you get to the end of the exhalation, keep your breath smooth. Don't stop it. Don't make it staccato movements. Keep it smooth to begin the next inhalation. So let's try that. Let's forget about the temperature difference. For now, let's just focus in on making smooth transitions between the inhalation and exhalation. It's not easy. It could take a long time before you get it right, so just be gentle with yourself and just do the best you can. Stay gentle and loving to yourself. And the reason why this exercise is so important is because the emotional stress in your body affects the breathing pattern. And the breathing pattern is primarily affected by that transition between the inhalation and exhalation. And if it's not smooth, it ends up creating a sort of a, quote, stiffness to the heartbeat. And that adds to the stress of the body. So doing this exercise is incredibly valuable. So let's just go back to that again. Keeping the transitions smooth as you can. That gets your vagal nerve stimulated and makes your body and your mind feel calm and peaceful. Now, I'd like you to, while you're keeping your breath nice and relaxed, keeping it natural as best you can, I want you to scan the upper part of your body from your waist up and become aware of some part of it that, some sensation, some acute sensation in some part of your body. This is your body talking to you. And when you find that spot, keep your awareness right on that spot. And I want you to ask you, what's bothering you there? And if some experience you've had, or some trauma, or some feeling right now that's causing that sensation, just name it. Give it a name, a title. And now what I'd like you to do is let go of that title, just let go of the cognitive mind, and just feel the body. Feel the energy in your body. Keep your breathing steady. And as you breathe into that energy, it will excite that vibration or energy sensation in your body. Just as you inhale, bring in that energy up and just experience it. Don't try to analyze it. Just be with it. Just feel it. Just stay in the present moment. Maintain breath awareness. And what's happening is your higher self is processing whatever negative energy is associated with that sensation. And sometimes it could take 30 seconds, sometimes it could take a minute, sometimes it could take 5, 10 minutes. This is a great system of how to process that negative energy, the pain body. So since we're doing this podcast, we got to come back. So just become aware of your toes. Put your awareness now on your toes and wiggle your toes. And wiggle your fingers. And then when you're ready, you can just open up your eyes and come back into our podcast. I find that this is one of the most important things to do, to maintain your health. Mm-hmm. And just do that whenever you get a moment. And even it's a great thing to do in your meditation, whatever practice you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I oftentimes see people use this practice to address their stressful lives. It's almost like a fix for I'm stressed. Instead of taking a pill, I would meditate and maybe temporarily it'll go away or something like that. But I feel like this practice is so much more than just calming down, and it's about being able to perceive more in your waking life. It's a practice of opening your channel of receiving, right?
You bring up a great point, because that's so much of what people are thinking about it, just relaxing, getting calm. And it can do that, mm-hmm. for sure. Once your vagal nerve is stimulating. Right. But the doorway to your subconscious and unconscious mind is through meditation, through being in the alpha and theta state. Mm-hmm. And you want to have access to that, because you want to get it to more of a, allow your higher self, this incredibly powerful tool, mm-hmm. to make you be healthier. Not only, and that will make you feel calm, mm-hmm. but the ego mind really works with only 5% of our overall consciousness, mm-hmm. just a surface. 95% is subconscious and unconscious. Mm-hmm. And that only is available to you when you're in the alpha and theta state.
Yeah.
So you want to deal with your whole self. And a lot of that, the traumas are there. You want to live with your traumas and, have your body just mm-hmm. always sitting on a volcano, or do you want to put that volcano asleep and mm-hmm. put it out, mm-hmm. process it?
Mm-hmm. I think, so they have another question about, so the evolution of consciousness. To me, it almost feels like it's a seasonal thing. By seasonal, I mean it's comes back to it's a circular experience. It's not all just evolving out in the, for example, during what was that period called? Love, peace, love.
The love movement.
Love movement. I feel like the consciousness was higher in a lot of people. And then there were a period of time where kind of went back. People became a little bit more asleep in a way. Is that how it is for you, or for you the evolution of consciousness is more of a gradual thing into the future? How does that work?
Another good question. The love movement was named because of the absence of love in the society. Mm-hmm. That when people became more aware, either through psychedelics or we didn't have meditation practices then, so to speak, that there was a crying out by the people who were becoming more aware that, like John Lennon, love is all we need, And it was because people weren't experiencing love in a real way, in a meaningful way. Nobody talked about it. It was, so it was like a desert, just crying out for love. And that, and I'm I'm an old hippie, even though, I've had extensive business experience and all kinds of things. But, during that period was the awareness of nutrition, higher consciousness, wanting to raise our consciousness, the need for that, the environmental focus was there. It was, the going back to the land, being sensitive to the environment. I mean, it was an amazing time, and it was just, it was a real awakening. Again, it was the tools to maintain it, like what I said before about we didn't have meditation practices, to take that awareness and build upon it.
Yes.
And without that, the ego mind just gobbled it all up.
Right.
Now, and then from that period, we had, Ram Dass and Jack Cornfield and, a bunch of other.
Terence McKenna is one of my favorite.
What?
Terence McKenna.
Yes.
One of my favorite.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they go to India,
Yeah.
and they get, because with Ram Dass, who's, his name he was born with was Richard Alpert. He was one of the most popular psychologists at Harvard, and he knew, and then he got hooked up with Timothy Leary, and then he started experimenting with psychedelics and realizing that no matter how much psychedelics, and they took a ton of doses, he always came down. Right. And that's when he realized he had to go to India and find some guru there. Because he realized that the West had only a limited sense of awareness of what consciousness was all about. And that's why he went to India. And so all these guys, men and women, went to India and then came back and started planting seeds, and then some yogis from India came in to help in the process. And so now the CDC, Center for Disease Control, how's that for a source of data on how many people are meditating in the United States? Supposedly 40 or 50 million people. Now I don't know how many are maintaining a consistent practice.
Right.
I don't think it's that number. But we're getting closer and closer to the point of a critical mass of people who are aware of the power of meditation. And that, because almost every article you read about how do you get yourself together always has a paragraph or so about meditation, right? Yep. Good sleep, good nutrition, right? Socialize, exercise, and meditate. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to do the best I can to be as good a teacher of meditation as I can to help along that process.
Do you? I don't know if you mentioned. Do you have kids?
I have 6 kids.
6 kids. What type of future? Describe to me a best case scenario future for them.
Know that I'm working on peace on earth, heaven on earth, because it's doable, Yeah. It's very doable, and it requires people to connect with their higher self, and it's going to take a mass movement to do that. Where people say, the most important thing I need to do today is meditate. And if we get to that point, and I think we're getting to that more and more, if we can get the whole population, the world population, to be meditating, we'll have a peaceful world. And even with AI, because then it'll be, just, pure spiritual energy coming from love, and that's existing. So AI will resonate on that spirit and that state of mind of the global consciousness. There'll be no reason for it to do anything else but, because I think it'll focus in on reality. And there's no reason why it should focus in on illusion. Doesn't need to. If it has that option to, right? Didn't go through the evolutionary, wrong turn in the road, get back, get back on the wagon. We fell off the wagon, So, heaven on earth, that's what I'm working on.
I think this is a beautiful place to end our dialogue in this format. The conversation will obviously continue long after as well, but I think this is a great place to start, to stop the recording. And thank you again for coming and for sharing your wisdom and your light with me and with people who are going to get to listen and watch this.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I really loved this conversation. I thirst for conversations like this, and
Same.
it's like the last time we spoke at the Miami Made.
Yeah.
I felt the same energy of resonance and lightness. So bless you and continue your great work.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you.